Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the BPM Change Management PRR Review monthly meeting. My name is Isabella Nicosia, representing ISO Stakeholder Affairs, and I'll be facilitating today's web conference. In an effort to increase transparency and provide greater service to stakeholders, the ISO records the BPM Change Management meetings. These recordings are for informational and convenience purposes only, allowing stakeholders to listen to meetings that they may have missed. The recordings will be publicly available on the BPM Change Management webpage for 30 days following the meeting. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the proposed revision requests or PRRs that are in the initial or recommendation stage of the process. Today we'll be discussing 12 PRRs, 5 are in the initial stage and 7 are in the recommendation stage. All have been ISO submitted. We will be taking questions throughout the call today, and you can enter the question queue at any time by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad. Just a reminder to everyone to please start by introducing yourself before asking your question. So an overview of the BPM change management process. It is part of the California ISO's larger stakeholder initiative process, and the purpose of BPMs is to set forth business practices that implement the ISO tariff. The ISO conducts a yearly policy initiative roadmap process to consider and rank initiatives, and policy changes are submitted through the PRR process and referred to in the policy initiative roadmap process. Each subject area in a BPM is based on enabling language in the ISO tariff, and the PRR process cannot be used to introduce changes that are not supported by existing tariff authority. So with that, we will dive into the content for today's call. We'll start with PRR 1240, and this is in the Congestion Revenue Rights BPM, and Jim McLean is here to walk us through this one.
Thanks, Isabella. All right, so we had a few things going on for this one. Some of it's just cleanup, clarifying language, but basically there were 3 areas that we actually touched on that are referenced in these sections here. One had to do with the timing of posting of our source sync list. For some reason, we still had some old language in the BPM, so we cleaned that up to make it consistent with how we've been doing this for the last few years, and is consistent with the calendar that we put out there. The other sections one of the other sections refers to the submittal of forecast and historical load data. This is, again, mainly just reemphasizing the timeline that we have for submittal, for resubmission, if there are any issues, what participants need to do, and when they're going to get notified about this, to try to streamline this thing to make sure that participants know you submit it based on the calendar. Within a couple of days, we will get information back to you whether it needs to be resubmitted or whether you need to go to the CEC and have any adjustments done if it's forecast data. So it's clarifying language there. And then the last thing was in attachment J, just clarification of the CR options settlement. And it had to do with basically the CR options that we have are two types. We have what we refer to as just the basic CR options. Those all are now getting settled on an hourly basis. Actually, we're changing that to where it's now settled purely hourly. We don't net across the day, which is how CR obligations were done. CR obligations had basically the netting. The intent was to allow surpluses to offset any shortfalls that might happen. For options, there's no need for it. It should be settled only on a positive, on an hourly basis, and there is no offset, meaning that you don't offset any shortfalls, so there was no need to do that. Then the other thing was just reemphasizing that the MTTORs, which is a special contractual class of CR options, those are derated not under the CR1B partial funding calculation, but under the contract, they're derated based on the OTTC comparison. That's the way they've always been done because they were always done based on a contractual basis. So that was just clarification in that area. We received no comments, so the initial comment period expired last on April 14th, so the next step is to post our recommendation.
Thanks, Jim. Just a reminder to everyone that you can enter the queue by pressing #2. Will, are there any questions in the queue?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay. Now for the reliability requirements BPM, we have 2 PRRs, both in the initial stage, 1239 and 1237, and Kalyani is here to take us through these ones.
Good morning, everyone. I will start with PRR 1239, actually. Okay, so the changes are required to provide the enhancements on the mix stabilization under this PRR, and the initial comments were submitted by 6 cities and SDGE. Initial comment period expired on April 14th. For more information on this PRR, I will hand it over to Kathleen Mixa, who is, I believe, also on the call.
Hi, everybody. This is Kathleen. Some of you were a little surprised that we put this PRR in. The reason we put this PRR in because it takes about 60 days to get it approved. Yes, we could have put it this month or next month, but it has to be an emergency PRR. That means it was effective immediately. We thought giving you more time to comment here as well as doing the stakeholder process is better than last time. That's why we filed it. We believe that under the stakeholder process that we have ongoing, the overwhelming majority of people believe that changing it from a 2-year to highest 2 out of 5, it is the preferred option. That's the only thing that we can implement really for our year 2021. That's why we started this PRR. If any additional changes are coming to the stakeholder process, that would be for our year 2022, and we'll have to put another PRR to get those in along with probably some tariff changes. So this does not preclude the process, the stakeholder process that we have. If any additional changes are coming to that process, they'll be implemented for 22 out a year, not for 21 out a year. So that's the reason why we put this PRR to begin with. So I think that's response to the 6 cities question, and San Diego submitted late questions, and they're pretty much the same ones they submitted in the stakeholder process, and we'll be addressing them in the stakeholder process. If anybody has any other questions, it might seem before you do that, it might seem like the writing is really long for this PRR, but all we're doing, we're actually copying the data from a 2005 technical bulletin where we had the MIC explain how you do the MIC calculation. Now we're actually putting the words into the BPM for everybody to clearly see what it is. So that's why it's fairly lengthy, because we never had it in the BPM. But literally the only change that is applied is using highest 2 of the 5 rather than just 5 the way we do today. That's the only change to the methodology. I'll take any questions that you have.
Are there any questions in the queue for Kathleen?
There are no questions in the queue. Oh, one's just come in. Your line's been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, Kathleen. This is Noah Tom from San Diego Gas Electric. I'm just wondering if the ISO would be able to provide some indicative values based on the new methodology through the either the PR process or the initiative process, and whether or not which one would be most optimal to have that done in.
I'm sorry, no, I think I may have misunderstood your question. Can you please repeat that?
Yeah, would the ISO be able to provide some indicative values on its proposal for the year-over-year change for the stabilization to see whether or not the proposal offers the level of stabilization that we're I guess either expecting or proposing? Have you looked into the results of?
Yeah. We look. Yeah, this goes in line with your comments. So we did look at your comments. The methodology you're using is not the correct one because you're actually not using the underlying data. You're just trying to use whatever data we provided, and you're doing some averages between those. It's not quite correct. So literally what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be using the data providing for the 2 highest years among the last 5. Just by doing that, but not, you don't even have to do any calculation. You would imagine that would actually stabilize MIC for a few years, unless you're having an increase every year. That that number should definitely be more stable than it is today. If you have decreases, more stable. If you have some in, some out, it's more stable. So just from the methodology perspective, it's definitely more stable. I haven't actually not done the calculation exactly what's going to be for year 2021. I do intend to do it, but it will definitely be more stable than it is today.
Yeah, I think that what we were thinking of is looking at the proposal and looking only based on the available import capability. Would that be augmented using a number? We as you said, we used the values that were made public rather than having the actual values. So it seems to us that potentially, as you roll off from one year to another, as the 5 years roll forward, you may get this somewhat massive jump or decrease over time. And just wanted to see, using some of the historical values that you guys presented or you have in your own systems, what that stabilization would have looked like in the past several years.
Yeah, unfortunately, what you really asked me, so let me translate this. I was planning to do that for 2021 because pretty much everybody agreed that this is a better methodology than what we used to have. What you're really asking me is to go back and redo the last 5 or 6 or 8 years with this method and see what the numbers would come up with. I wasn't planning on doing, 8 times the work I'm supposed to be doing for 1 year in order just to kind of have a validity that this is doing what the theoretical part tells me it should be doing. I understand why would you want to see that, but I'm just telling you that for me, in order to do that, I literally have to go backwards, year after year after year after year after year and kind of toggle back 5 years, pick the 2, and do the math. It might not be exactly 8 or 10 times the work, but it'll still be 4 or 5 times the work. I was not planning on doing that. If you're asking me right now, I don't have the data, and I was not planning to do that.
Understood. Thanks.
Are there any other questions in the queue?
There are no further questions.
Thanks, Catalin.
All right. So PRR 1237 was submitted. It was basically the removal of the reference to outage management BPM section 4.5, which had the verbiage as a result of PRR 1122. So PRR 1122 was filed last year, and it was basically for any inappropriate reporting of forced outages. It was context on adding clarity to what is inappropriate behavior for reporting these forced outages, and that's why, and the note was initially in the RR BPM, and it was removed from that BPM and added to outage management BPM. However, as a result of that PRR, we received a few appeals, and as a result of that, it was decided to remove this implementation from both the BPMs effective immediately. So PRR 1237 for RR BPM, and on the next slide, PRR 1236 for outage management BPM, both were filed, and both the BPMs with the latest updates have been posted on the website. We received initial comments. The comments were basically statements acknowledging ISO starting these emergency PRRs, and the initial period expired on April 14th. And our next step for both the both the PRRs is to post recommendations.
Thanks, Kalyani. Are there any questions in the queue regarding either one of these PRRs?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay. Thanks. Moving on to the market operations BPM, we have one PRR in the initial stage. This is PRR 1235, and Jamal Bataji is on the line to take us through this one.
Good morning. Thanks, Isabella. PRR 1235 for market operations BPM. This is just an update to a list of expected energy types to include some manual dispatch codes. And nothing really changed here. This is just this is already in effect. No comments received. The initial comment period expired on April 4, and next step is to post recommendation for this PRR. I can move on to the next one, PRR 1230. This is for market instrument BPM. What we did an additional modification to the language that was originally posted in PRR 1181. This proposed modification to the master file includes additional clarifications and defined timelines for review of master file changes, including timelines for submission of support documentation and ISO responses. For this phase, no comments submitted, and the recommendation period expired on April 14, and the next step is to post the final decision for this PRR. Any questions?
Again, you can enter the question queue by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad. Are there any questions in the queue for Jamal?
All right, looks like there are no questions at this time.
Okay, thanks, Jamal. Now for the settlements and billings BPM, we have 2 PRRs both in the recommendation stage. It's PRR 1234 and PRR 1233, and Brenda Corona is on the line to walk us through these ones.
Thank you, Isabella. For PRR 1234, we updated the BPM conversion guides for charge codes 5701 and 5705. This is part of the reliability coordinator change to make sure the minimum charge for entities outside of the onboarding will be processed through the April 1st timeline. We also have no comments submitted through our PR process, and the comments did expire on the 14th, and our next step is to post final decision. PR 1233, we updated the following conversion guides, charge code 1001, and 1101, and then 3101. And we did create 2 new conversion guides, part of the 3102, 1102, and they're part of the Black Start System Restoration Phase 2 initiative. And there's many details in this reason of revision to provide what occurred and what changes were made. Our planned production date is for the 4/29, which is tomorrow, and this is effective dated of 5/1/2020. We did not receive any comments for this PR, and we are going to be on the next step to post final decision. Thank you, Isabella. If there's any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Brenda. Are there any questions in the queue?
There are currently no questions in the queue.
Okay. Now for the transmission planning process BPM, we have 1 PRR in the recommendation stage. This is PRR 1232, and Gary DeShaza is on the line to take us through this one.
Okay, so I don't have any visibility if you have slides, so I'm just currently on the phone. The intent of the changes that we proposed for this part of the transmission planning BPM was to consolidate all of the information and actions and requirements related to interregional transmission coordination into a single chapter. The intent was, considering the ISO's transmission planning process, which is outlined in 3 phases, the interregional transmission coordination is actually encompassed in phases 1 and 2, but because it has a specific tariff requirement in our tariff, which is section 2418, we felt that it was appropriate to pull all of that information into one place. Mainly it's just it makes it easier for anyone that's looking for information relating to the interregional transmission coordinating process in understanding the process that we're going through. As I understand it, we have not received any comments associated with this BPM change, and so whatever the next step is, I think that's where we're headed.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, so the recommendation comment period expired on the 14th, and the next step will be to post the final decision. Are there any questions in the queue?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to, thank you, Gary. Moving on to the candidate CRR holder registration BPM, we have one PRR in the recommendation stage. This is PRR 1231, and Nicole Hines is on the line to take us through this one.
Thanks, Isabella. So PRR 1231, like it stated, is in the recommendation phase. The reason for this revision was to add a commencement date in alignment with the tariff and update formatting and URL links. Currently, we do not receive any recommendation comments, and the recommendation comment period expired on April 14th, 2020. So our next step is that we are going to post final decision for this PRR. Are there any questions?
All right, still no questions in the queue.
Thanks, Nicole. For the direct telemetry BPM, we have one PRR in the recommendation stage. This is PRR 1229. And Priyanka Namburi, are you on the line to take us through this one?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you. PRR 1229 is for an update in the telemetry BPM to remove dispersive technologies. ISO no longer have a contract with dispersive technologies, and it is no longer an ISO telemetry transport option. So we have updated the BPM to remove this option. And we have not received any recommendations, and the recommendation comment period expired on April 14th, 2020, and the next step is to post final decision.
Thanks, Priyanka. Are there any questions in the queue regarding this PRR?
Still no questions.
Okay, thanks, Will.
Thank you.
And finally, to wrap up our PRRs for today, we have PRR 1228 in the recommendation stage in the Managing Full Network Model BPM, and Vivian Lang is here to take us through this one.
Thank you, Isabella. This PRR is including the change in section 42712 to align with the tariff revision to make illegal canyon provision permanent due to FERC Order ER 20273. And the effect date was December 31st, 2019. No comment was submitted before the comment period was expired. The next step is to post final decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian. Are there any questions in the queue?
All right, looks like we still don't have any questions.
Okay. And the recommendation comment period expired on April 14th. That's a typo. We'll make sure to correct that. So the next BPM PRR review monthly meeting is May 26th at 11 a.m. And if there are any questions regarding any of the PRRs that were discussed today or anything related to the BPM change management process, you can reach out to me at 916-608-5829 or send an email to the BPM_CM@CAISO.com email address on this slide, and we'll get back to you. But with that, I'll open it up to see if there are any last questions before we conclude.
Still no questions in the queue.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us. That concludes today's meeting, and have a great rest of your day.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using AT&T Event Conferencing Enhanced. You may now disconnect.